Good evening and Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome to the January 3rd, 2012 meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council, the very first Village Council meeting of the year. It's my privilege to call this meeting to order. And it is customary for us to begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. So after you've helped yourself to an agenda on either side of the room to follow along with our meeting, and there will be opportunities for public comment throughout tonight's meeting, as I mentioned, it is customary for us to begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. So at this point in time, I would ask that everyone please rise and join us in reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now I'd like to ask our fine village clerk, April Holden, to please call the roll.
Commissioner Rankin? Here. Commissioner Barnett?
Here.
Commissioner Newstead?
Here.
Commissioner Durkin?
Here.
Commissioner Waldeck? Commissioner Schnell?
Here.
Mayor Tully?
Here. Thank you. It brings us to item 3, just making sure you're paying attention. Item 3 on our agenda are approval of minutes from prior council meetings. We have one set of minutes to approve tonight, and those are the minutes from December 13th, 2011. Are there any changes or corrections from any members of the council? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve those minutes as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. The minutes are approved unanimously. That brings us to item 5 on our agenda, public hearings. We have no public hearing tonight, so we will skip right along to item number 6. Once again, just making sure you're paying attention. We skipped over number 4. Public comments. Let's go back to number 4 on the agenda. General comments on matters not appearing on tonight's agenda. This is the opportunity to ask questions or make comments with respect to any items of pertinence to the village, regardless of whether or not they are on our business agenda for tonight. So if anyone has any questions or comments of a general nature, at this point in time, we would ask that you please come down to the podium, give us your name, address, and we'd love to hear from you. I obviously threw everybody off by going out of order. So now we'll go to public hearings, and there are no public hearings tonight. So we'll go to item 6, which is our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments from anyone in the audience with respect to the consent agenda? Any questions or comments from anyone on the council with respect to the consent agenda? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Schnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Consent agenda is approved unanimously. That brings us to item 7 on our agenda tonight. We have one item on our active agenda, but we do have a request from the petitioner to continue this item until a date uncertain, I believe.
That is correct. We received that email earlier today, and so the appropriate motion would be to table this item to a date uncertain.
All right, do I have a motion to table item 7A on our agenda to a date uncertain?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments from anyone in the audience? Any questions or comments from any members of the council? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Schnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. The matter will be continued to a date uncertain, and for those of you who might be listening at home, the matter was a proposed ordinance to restrict vehicle movement on Webster Street. That brings us to item 8 on our agenda tonight, which is our first reading portion of the meeting. We have several items on the agenda tonight. These are items that will be presented for the first time for discussion, question and comment, and for to be voted on and action taken on at a later point in time. As is customary, the first reading portion of the meeting will be turned over to the village manager to present the items on our agenda tonight. Mr. Fieldman.
Thank you, Mayor Tully. There are 4 items on tonight's published agenda. However, item D, the last item on the first reading, the Human Service Commission recommendation, will be moved and considered at next week's meeting for first reading, just to allow the opportunity for Commissioner Waldeck to participate in that conversation. He could not be here tonight. But there are 3 other items on tonight's first reading agenda, all being presented tonight by our Community Development Director, Tom Daberiner. So basically, I'm going to turn the entire first reading over to Tom, and we'll start with consideration of a resolution regarding the Rotary Club Grove Fest for 2012.
Good evening, Mr. Daberiner. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Mayor and Council. First item is the resolution that's been prepared to enter into an agreement with the Rotary Club of Downers Grove to hold Grove Fest in downtown Downers Grove, June 21st through 24th of 2012, and we're looking for approval on the January 10th, 2012 agenda. Oops. The Grove Fest, as it's being proposed this summer, is substantially the same as the fest that you all enjoyed last summer. The dates are the June 21st through 24th, as I mentioned. Virtually everything is the same, and I'll show a site plan in a moment. Same amusement rides. The specific entertainment will probably be different. Items like that, everything that's shown there. This is the area that we're talking about, same as last year. There's a craft fair at Official Park, Saturday and Sunday. We've got the Sunday car show. The areas that are set aside for the rides north of the tracks, the entertainment area, the beer garden, the vendor area, and the kids' rides in that vicinity south of the tracks. The highlights are this. In fact, there was one minor change. The amusement rides on Friday would start at noon instead of 5 p.m. That is really the only change that we're looking at. Other than that, hours of operation are the same. Reimbursement is fully covered. The village's estimated expenses would be just over $32,000. The requirement per policy is to supply a letter of credit for 120% of that amount in advance. That amounts to $38,736. Let's see. So everything else would be the same. Insurance is covered. Everything else is the same. We do have representatives here from Rotary who are available to answer questions, but staff is recommending approval. This did go through community events. Forgot to mention that. Went through community events on December 8th. They reminded everyone to make sure that we're talking with residents, businesses, and commuters. Unanimously passed the recommendation to approve the agreement.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from anyone in the audience with respect to the proposed 2012 Rotary Grove Fest? Any questions or comments from members of the council? Commissioner Durkin.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. You said 120% of the fees for LOC? I thought I read it was 110. The letter of credit. Mm-hmm. Is that a mistake?
No, it should read 120%. And that's the amount that...
No, I understand. I thought I read it was 110.
Okay.
Anyway, I guess it's more maybe a policy question for later on. This is the third year that they've had the fest with us, right? Or they've sponsored doing the fest?
That's correct.
With the track history and historical background we have with the organization, I mean, I would be in favor if we reduced that LOC from 120%. I mean, if you got that down to maybe even 105 or something like that. I mean, it's just an opinion of mine. I know this is totally off because when I talked to Dave or Manager Fieldman, I didn't have any comments on this, but just hearing what Mr. Reiner just said, I figured I'd just bring it up now.
Sure. What we can do is just go back and look at the past 2 years and see how close our estimate was to the actual fees. We've worked very well with the Rotary Club, so if we have the opportunity to reduce that a little bit, we will present that to you next week.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, I know one of the things that wasn't available or we didn't participate in the last couple of years is a council booth. Will there be any such thing in this year's fest?
I'm sure if we showed interest in a council booth that the Rotary would accommodate us. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I see heads nodding, so yes, we could do that.
Okay.
I think maybe if you, Commissioner Neustadt, and I grab a card table and some folding chairs to have the council table.
Sounds like a plan to me. I'll bring the water. I just wish, it's great to hear that they're coming back even in this tough economic times. It's example of, community stepping forward when the council and the village decided to back away from certain items. And I just continue to tip my hat to the Rotary Club, and as a former member, I wish them the best of success. It's on my calendar. I know I will be in town this year, and if we could just look at some sort of reduction in that percentage of that LOC, I think that'd be beneficial, not only to us, but also to them more so.
We'll take a look at that, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions, comments from members of the council? Commissioner Newstead.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to echo what Commissioner Durkin said, it's great to see that this segment of our community is back. You know, it hasn't really ever gone away thanks to the Rotary, but we have a great festival now. I'm impressed that the layout has stayed the same. I think there's always that temptation to let it grow, and that's where we ended with our former festival here in Downers Grove. But to see that it contained in a good layout, a good geographical layout, especially with Curtis Street still being open, I think it allows for our downtown to still function. From what I remember from last year and other conversations, the downtown merchants were actually pleased with how the layout affected their sales and their stores during that weekend. So I look forward to it. I would be at that card table and folding chairs event if it does come up. One question or one comment, you know, last year the Rotary Club used an online form to find volunteers, and I just don't need that information for tonight, but I just want to make sure, because that was one of the kind of conditions that we set to make sure the volunteer lists were set prior to the event, to make sure all of the posts, specifically the security posts, were covered, so the Rotary had adequate staff for the event. So just a quick question that popped into my mind, if that's going to be a similar style for this year. And again, I see heads nodding, but I think that worked really well last year, and you're able to see who was working when and where, so I think that was a great way to do it, and if that's how it's done again, then I will look forward to signing up myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Well, not to prejudge the item, but I would point out, in fact, that there are exactly 170 days left until the Rotary Growth Fest. Any other questions or comments from the council? Thank you, Mr. Dave-Reiner. That brings us to item 8B.
The next item is an agreement authorizing an oasis grant in the amount of $22,295 for the property located at 222 and 224 Ogden Avenue, which is the Radio Shack and the Soccer 2000 building. And staff is seeking approval of the grant on the January 10th, 2012 agenda. I'm going the wrong way. Let's see here. Okay.
You know, that is kind of a refreshing map, Tom, because it's so cold outside, we know when this is reality.
June 21st is the
Would
first
you
day
like
of
to
summer.
see it again while I kill some time here? Let's see. The oasis program, just as a reminder, is a matching grant program for certain improvements, site improvements. And the program was established by this council in conjunction with EDC leadership, September 2010. It stems from a top priority item at the strategic plan level to implement the Ogden Avenue Master Plan with its focus on providing more attractive sites, improving traffic circulation for vehicles, improving building appearance, improving signage, reducing visual clutter. I'm having a problem. Yes, shoot. Would you like to read Mike's email while we...
Sure, it's more interesting than mine. You can't tell folks that we were off for a few weeks, can you?
No more vacations for me, clearly. All right, here, I think I'll just move. Here's the, within the blue area are the eligible properties. I'm not going to spend much time on it, or I will get stuck there, too. There have been 5 submittal deadlines beginning in December 2010. The latest that is before you tonight relates to applications that were due in October of 2011. 6 projects were reviewed in October by the committee. There's a committee led by EDC, Chamber is on it, others as well. 3 applications were recommended for funding, which would bring us to a total number of projects, if approved, to 22. 1 application is being reviewed by Village Council tonight, hopefully for a vote next week. 2 are under the $15,000 limit and would be approvable by the village manager. This highlights the projects that have been approved in the past. I'm not going to run through all of them, but the one that we're looking at again tonight is located at the far east side of the Ogden TIF area. The primary benefits of what is before you tonight are reducing the number of curb cuts from 2 to 1, and then installing new signs, replacing existing signs with compliance signs. The recommended grant amount, as I mentioned, is just over $22,000, and the total cost of the improvements are $43,661. This is the site, an aerial of the site with the building. The cut itself that's being replaced is shown by that small X to the east side of the property. There is a cut immediately to the east, which is DG Yamaha, I believe. And this is an existing building. I don't have shots of what's being proposed, but those signs, those existing signs would be reduced in size to become compliant. The existing pole sign is shown here, and I've got a scan from the plans, and this is proportionately about what we'd be looking at, something from there to there. So it's a pretty significant change to come into compliance, and they are proposing to do so. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the requested grant.
Thank you. Any questions or comments with respect to the proposed grant agreement with Alexander LLC from the audience? Hearing none. Questions or comments from the council? Commissioner Schnell.
I do have a question, and I apologize for not bringing this up earlier. Can you go to the site plan that shows the new sign?
The site plan?
Well,
This, the
no,
aerial?
there's, at least in our packet, there's one that actually locates the sign.
Right, I
Do you
don't have a slide
okay,
for
well,
that. Mhm.
The question I have is, I'd like to see, in relationship to where the sign is, which looks like it's on the property line, where is the easement for the sidewalk? I want to make sure the easement for the sidewalk doesn't go through the sign, and I can't figure that out.
We'll clarify that for you in the
Could you? I mean,
prior
could
to
you,
the
like,
next.
give me a picture?
Sure.
I like pictures. You can see these. I mean, it doesn't say on what I would consider a site plan, if you want to use that term loosely, anywhere where the easement is for the sidewalk.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from the council? Commissioner Rankin?
I had a question just about the oasis program in general. For some of these, we've given them their grants, but they haven't, I've noticed they haven't done their improvements. Is there some sort of deadline where they need to do their improvements and submit their payments, receipts? Or can it be indefinite?
We'll double check the language in the actual contract. It's our intent that if they don't use the funding, that a certain amount of time passes, we'd be able to cancel that agreement. We'd obviously work with the petitioner on that before we would take that step, but we'll double check the language and get back to you on that.
Okay.
It is a reimbursement program, though, and we do
Right.
check receipts. And I know that there are projects underway. I believe we've only reimbursed in one case to date.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Schnell, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, it's workshop.
And it's been 2 weeks off. Can you also, for next week, give us an idea of what kind of, the landscaping, or the cost of landscaping is like $1,200 for the landscaping around the sign. Can you give us an idea of what's going to be put in there? Again, I think any beautification we can give to Ogden Avenue, the better off we are. And then as condition of the Oasis grant, if the landscaping dies, do they have to replace it? Or can it just die and
No,
look like?
there are maintenance requirements associated with all of that. It comes under
Okay,
property
so all the
maintenance,
grants,
absolutely.
if things
Yeah.
die or are not taken care of, we can ask them to, okay,
Yes.
thank you.
And we also clarified, Enzo read the agreement really quickly there, it's 1 year is the time that you have to complete the improvements.
Thank you for that fast read.
If not, then they have to reapply, correct?
That is correct.
Correct.
That's it.
Any other questions or comments from the council? Very good, thank you. It brings us to item 8C.
The next item relates to the Prince Street, proposed right-of-way vacation for Prince Street near Downers Grove North High School. An ordinance has been prepared vacating a 66-foot wide by 600-foot long portion of the Prince Street right-of-way located between Grant Street on the south and Sherman Street on the north. And we're looking for approval on the January 10th active agenda. And just a reminder that that would require 5 affirmative votes for that vacation of right-of-way. This is the approximate location of the stretch of Prince Street that we're talking about. Here it is in aerial format with the right-of-way area shown outlined in yellow. The right-of-way vacation is part of a much larger set of improvements, a comprehensive set of improvements by District 99, and we've overlaid the improvements here. Most of these are already complete or near completion, there are representatives from the school district here who can talk in more detail about all of this. Plan Commission found at its meeting that the proposed closure of Prince Street and the right-of-way vacation is consistent with the village's right-of-way vacation policy, zoning ordinance, and comprehensive plan, and the Plan Commission unanimously recommended approval of the right-of-way vacation. Staff concurs. I'd like to introduce Dr. McDonald from District 99, who has a couple slides to show you and a portion of the presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, Dr. McDonald. Welcome. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you, Mr. Mayor and Village Council. And actually, I do not have slides, but my colleagues do. My name is Mark McDonald. I'm Superintendent of Community High School District 99. I'm also a resident of the Village of Downers Grove. And I'm attending this evening on behalf of the district as we request the Village Council vacate a portion of Prince Street Avenue, Prince Street, on the block between Grant and Sherman, to enable the school district to facilitate the development of a North High campus to the west of the school in the stadium field. This project has been a vision of many in the district for more than a decade. In fact, the district began buying lots in the block bordered by Grant, Prince, and Saratoga in the late 1990s, hoping one day to own all the lots on that block, and that goal was finally achieved in the summer of 2011 when the district purchased the final property. With that achieved, we are now poised to implement this new vision of the North High campus. The district began creating this vision without a source of revenue. In the summer of 2010, however, a legal dispute over a former district school site located in the village of Woodridge was resolved, resulting in the school district receiving approximately $14.8 million in compensation for that site. And those funds have thus become the revenue stream the district needed to move forward with its master site work. While several preliminary efforts occurred in 2008 and 2009 with regard to this plan, more specific planning to address the North High campus site occurred in the fall of 2010 and the early winter of 2011, culminating with a plan presented to the Board of Education in January 2011, which was subsequently approved. Prior to this phase of the planning, the Board had directed the administration to address 3 specific issues with regard to the North Campus. The first was to improve overall safety on the campus. The second, to increase the available playing space or green space on the North Campus. And third, to provide facilities that would allow our current programs more space on the campus and also allow us to bring back some of the programs that currently use off-campus sites. Understand that if North High were constructed today, architects and planners would recommend a campus footprint roughly 4 times what currently exists. So given that, expanding our space and making our space safer for North High students and families is a vitally important component to the future of North High School. A critical aspect of safety is to reduce the incidence of students crossing Main Street during the school day for physical education and athletic practices. Thus, our plan is to relocate most of the parking for North High east of Main Street and taking that parking, most of the parking that's currently on the west of Main Street, and making that into green and playing space. Additionally, we seek to locate our bus drop-off and pickup on the campus in an area close to school exits and in a location in which students will not have to cross the street to board buses. Thus, our plan to relocate the bus drop-off and pickup at the southwest corner of the campus. Vacating Prince Street, raising the properties in the block due west of the high school, relocating parking, and establishing green grass fields to the west of the stadium enables us to greatly expand our field space such that we will have many more opportunities to use our campus for physical education and athletics and to bring back athletic programs onto the campus. In essence, we are looking to create the look, feel, and utility of a campus, a true campus, where today there truly is not one. This is the context of our request, and I would certainly like to thank the village staff for extensive work on this project along with us, and also the council for their time and consideration through various levels of this approval. I would like to ask my colleague, Mr. Chuck Hiscock, Associate Principal at North High, to come forward and address some of the issues related to how we will actually use the bus drop-off and pick-up. Mr. Hiscock.
Thank you, Dr. McDonald. Good evening, Mr. Hiscock.
Good
Happy
evening.
New Year.
You seem like very nice people, but I'm still nervous, so bear with me. My name is Chuck Hiscock. I've been the Associate Principal of Operations at North High School for the past 6 years, and I've been involved in the master site plan for a good portion of that time. The goal of this process has always been to improve and expand upon our campus, improve the facilities, improve functionality, and more important than anything else, improve student safety. Safety in particular is important to me because I've been unhappy with our bus situation at North since the first day I was on the job. I'll talk specifically about that in just a moment. During this process, we've tried to be very sensitive to the needs of all who might be affected by these improvements. We've listened to students, staff, community members, and have tried to come up with the best plan possible, keeping in mind that our primary concern must be for the safety of our students and for the needs of our program. Some of the issues we've heard repeatedly concerned issues revolving around the bus and parking and traffic and things like that. Some of those include student safety during bus pickups in the afternoon, specifically. Students walking a long distance to get the buses, sometimes in the rain, snow, cold, those kind of issues. Buses idling on Prince Street for long periods of time. Closing Prince Street during the afternoons to accommodate those buses, while we generally close Prince Street for about a half an hour. And large numbers of cars parking and picking up students after athletic practices or dropping off students for clubs, rentals, and other activities. I'd like to share with you our current situation as well as fill you in on some of our plans moving forward to address these concerns. Currently, we have 19 buses that pick up and drop off students on Prince Street. In the morning, there's not really a significant problem because buses come at staggered times and do not need to idle or block traffic. In the afternoon, however, the entire street is blocked between 3:05 and 3:35 on a good day. All of our buses arrive on and park on Prince Street. 16 of the buses park on the east side of the street facing north, while 3 park on the west side of the street facing south. This means that in order to get to the student parking lot, their buses, their homes, or any other place they want to go to, Scooby's included, many of our students, as much as we try to stop them, walk on the street in between the buses while the buses are still trying to get to their assigned spaces. This is an extremely unsafe situation. We have pictures that we've shown in the community where kids are very close to getting hit by buses. It makes us all very, very uncomfortable. When the buses are dismissed, they all proceed to Saratoga via Sherman or Grant Streets and proceed south. All of our buses arrive on Prince Street and leave on Saratoga. Our proposed plan eliminates buses stopping or idling on Prince Street at all. We've received many complaints from people in the community. Why are these buses always parked in front of our houses? I can't get to my driveway, things like that. In the morning, the buses will be able to pull into a clearly marked bus stall, drop students off, and leave immediately using the Saratoga exit. Similarly, in the afternoon, buses will enter via Prince Street, pull into a stall, and load kids. They won't be on the street at any time. Students will be able to get to the buses without crossing a public street or weaving in and out of buses. When the buses are released, they will exit the lot via Saratoga, and this plan has a bunch of benefits, including improving student safety. They won't be walking in and out of buses as the buses are idling or passing or anything like that. We'll eliminate long walks for students to get to a bus. We'll remove idling buses from in front of the houses on Prince Street, and we will reopen Prince Street during the afternoons, which is a huge concern for a lot of our community. It's important to stress that this plan will add no additional bus traffic to either Prince Street or Saratoga, which is currently a concern for a lot of our neighbors. Currently, we have 19 buses arriving on Prince Street and leaving on Saratoga. Under the new plan, we will still have 19 buses arriving on Prince Street and leaving on Saratoga. Another concern expressed by our community is that numerous cars circle the area, park on Prince Street to pick up their children after athletic practices or events. And similarly, the neighbors point out that parents dropping off children for clubs and rentals after school can be a nuisance for them. Currently, our parking lot is situated too far away to be a practical place for students to be picked up by their parents after school. We feel that our new site plan addresses these concerns by creating a drop-off pickup area that's easily accessible to kids and is much closer to the exits. The pickup area will be close to the gym, pool, stadium, and the back gym exit, where most of the after-school activities take place, and will also provide shelter for students in case of rain or other inclement weather. The space is also large enough to accommodate parents that arrive early, giving them a place to park rather than circling the neighborhood or parking on Prince Street. Our coaches and security staff would work with athletes and parents to ensure that expectations for drop-off and pickups are clear. We also have our outside supervisors out there making sure initially that everybody was complying with what we were expecting. Same rules would apply for weekend rentals, practices, or events. In the past, we've struggled with buses from other schools that park on the street during tournaments and competitions. The new lot would provide a clearly marked bus stall area that could be used to keep the buses off the street. We believe this plan addresses many of the concerns expressed by students, staff, parents, and neighbors. In fact, we're convinced this traffic situation on North High School will dramatically improve with the addition of the new lot. As a result, we're confident that student safety will improve as well. That's basically it for my comments. I'd like to thank you for your time, and I'd certainly be willing to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Hiscock. Appreciate the presentation. What I'm going to suggest is that we break our comments up into two sections. So while Dr. McDonald and Mr. Hiscock are there, if there are any questions from the council while you're standing there, then why don't we entertain those from the council, and then we're going to take public comments, and then we can have more council comments after that, if that makes sense. So as long as you gentlemen are right there, Commissioner Schnell?
Could I just have a clarification? You had said that the buses were going to enter and exit onto Saratoga, not onto Grand Street. Is that what you said?
They will enter on Prince Street. If you look at the schematic there, the south there at Prince Street, where the red dot is where the buses would enter, and then they would leave on Saratoga out the other side of the parking lot.
But they enter, I mean, it's actually,
They
the
would
corner
come in-
is Grant and Prince.
Yeah, it's kind of the corner of
Yeah,
Grant and
it's the
Prince, right.
corner. So they'd enter off the corner of where the street is being vacated.
Correct.
And they will exit, so they're going to come down Saratoga to Grant and then make a left-hand turn into the parking lot?
They're going to come down Prince Street, enter the parking lot going north on Prince Street. And if you can see, I don't know if you can see there's some bus stalls lined out there. The buses would park there, and then as they leave, they would leave directly through from Saratoga. So they're coming in one exit and leaving the other. I don't know, maybe I'm not explaining, I might not be explaining this.
I'm familiar with it because our daughter went to
Right.
North, and God knows I spent enough time over there, but I
I can, here, let me walk.
yeah.
I think
What we're going to do is we're going to have, the buses are going to come up Prince Street here, which is what they do right now.
That's what they do right now.
They're going to come up Prince Street here,
Okay,
they'll come and park in these bus stalls,
okay,
and when it's time to leave, they'll leave out Saratoga this way,
okay,
which is currently what they do now anyway.
okay. Except they all go all the way up Prince Street.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. Commissioner Durkin?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. If I understood this correctly, you are consolidating parking that's on the west side of the school and putting it to the east side of Main Street, just south of the funeral home.
Yes. Correct, right.
Have you had any thought or given any consideration because of the student body, I assume, that will be parking in those lots? Or even, it doesn't really matter for students or parents or educators or whoever, putting a pedestrian crosswalk over Main Street?
Yes, we have.
And where do we stand with that?
We're not ready to do that yet. I think we really want to see the parking lot will channel people to crossing at the light where they currently cross with fencing. We're not sure whether or not we need to put that crosswalk in place or not. We want to look and see how the project works out and how it actually functions, because that is a relatively expensive item, given the fact that we'll have to provide an elevator and
A lot of clearance, too.
clearance. So.
What about an underpass then? Or a tunnel?
We
I mean, they're
haven't-
common along Lakeshore Drive in other cities that
Right.
I've seen.
We haven't explored the concept of tunnel. We haven't explored it. We do have preliminary plans for it.
Okay. So I can comfortably feel that you guys are looking at, your group is looking at doing possibly such a thing down the road.
Yes.
Right.
See, I think that's the biggest detriment, is that you have that parking on that side, and you have such a large volume of personnel crossing that street. And being a teenager once myself, you know, darting across traffic, I can beat the light. I would just hate to see someone get seriously injured, if not killed. And then we go back to the drawing board and say, oh, well, maybe we should do this.
We have that right now, though, 8 hours a day.
Well, I understand that,
Something
but
like
we're
that
also
for 30,
increasing the size of the
40.
parking lot to accommodate more, so you can do more with your athletics. So that's where my concern lies, that you look at that and do something before it's too late. That's my only concern with the whole project. How the buses come in and go, you know, that's your job. You know, you guys will figure that out for the most efficient way, but the public safety side of it in this regard is utmost concern of mine.
Can I comment on that?
Sure.
Just, right now, we have one of our athletic fields across the street, and what we have had students hit by cars, unfortunately, because as they run across the street to get from their PE class. So you know, we feel like fencing off that parking lot, so we have to funnel kids to the light is a safer situation than kids running across to get to athletic fields and things like that. A lot of times, especially during summer camps, where we have kids that aren't necessarily our students, they're younger students, that's when we have kids run across the street and get hit by cars and things like that, so.
Does the school have any sort of disciplinary action that it puts onto a student
Absolutely.
that crosses on a red light or crosses that street illegally?
Absolutely,
There is?
yes,
So you already have action or plans or a program?
yes.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Commissioner Barnett?
Thank you, Mayor. If it's any consolation, principals make me nervous based on my past, so we're on the same page now. I've got a couple of questions, but let me just start by saying I really compliment you guys. Going back to those school boards, if it was the 90s or 80s or whenever it was that they started looking at this, the idea to take that vision. One of the things about any of this kind of work, you know, whether it's Midway Airport or it's underpasses or stormwater or, you know, a fully developed community is going to have real challenges as it tries to grow and adapt and add things and subtract things. It's just tough, and there's no way to do it without, you know, crushing a few eggs along the way and making change, and change challenges people. But you guys have put together a plan that I think is outstanding, and really I compliment you guys for trying to address many of the things that are sort of inherent problems. It's a way better situation, in my opinion, after this is done than what we've got today. And there's just no getting around the fact that we don't have 30 acres or whatever the magic number is that people would suggest. So I compliment you guys for doing this. I compliment you for thinking big early on and pressing forward and working through those challenges of the 90s and early 2000s to get to this point. It's a big deal, and I'm glad we're doing it. I'm hopeful that the whole thing goes forward sooner rather than later from where I sit. A couple questions. Commissioner Durkin mentioned this underpass thing. That was on my list too. Is there any discussion about going, you know, all the way north between Saratoga and Prince? Obviously, it's not your property today, but when we start talking about bus traffic and things, it would seem to me logical that if there was an opportunity for that, it'd make a lot of sense. You get buses in and out off of Ogden instead of in and out off of the neighborhoods to the south. Has that ever gone past anybody's mind over there?
That would be purchasing other property in addition to what we have?
Yeah.
Yes, it's gone through. One issue that we have with regard to the bus drop-off and pickup is there is a need for us to have it close to where the students walk out the door. because otherwise they're walking several blocks to get on the bus.
Okay.
And we want to make sure that it's both a safe egress and exit, and it's also one that minimizes their exposure to the elements of bad weather. I mean, at Southside, we have roughly the same configuration for the bus drop-off and pickup. That was a change made in 2008. And at South, the kids are walking 20 or 30 feet out the door to get on the buses. This is not as optimum a situation because they have to walk 100 yards to get on the buses, which is better than walking 3 blocks.
Sure.
So we are limited somewhat in our planning with regard to how can we create a place where the buses pick up our kids where they don't have to walk an extended distance and they're not subject to the elements.
And then on Sherman Street, Sherman gets either all the time or some hour directed one way immediately north of the tennis courts right now. Is that going to stay the same, or is there a change relative to the western part of Sherman, or?
Right. I think that's.
We haven't talked about that.
That all's going to stay the same, we think? Okay. Well, I've got a short list because I think it's such a fantastic project. I'm glad you're doing it. And I think it's a great example of our ability to help you guys facilitate this is an example, I think, of what people expect from government taxing agencies working together. I'm excited for you guys and hopeful that we can be a part of it. Good luck.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions for Dr. McDonald or Mr. Hiscock? Commissioner Neustadt?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to start from the east side and go west, if that's all right. To Commissioner Durkin's point, I think for clarification, there is a fence that would be on the west side of the sidewalk on that new proposed parking lot, which would be the student lot.
Yes.
So there will be a fence basically blocking the kids from darting across Main Street. Now, they'll still probably cross all crooked when they get down to the intersection of Grant and Main Street, but that does happen today. I think that
It's been happening for decades.
there, a little increased, district security out there might help with that, but that could be done tomorrow or even probably right now as we speak. So one of my concerns about the east side, and I know we're talking about a vacation of a street over on the west side of the property, but the traffic influences down to Highland, Sherman, Grant Street, and kind of all that traffic moving over to the east side of the campus. I live on Saratoga now, and I see the traffic that comes out of the Saratoga student lot now going both directions and pretty much everywhere in our neighborhood. So I think there's a significant amount of poor driving, fast driving, enforcement activity by our Downers Grove Police Department. So I just want to hear if there's any ideas or thoughts about Highland Avenue, Grant Street, and even Washington and Chicago as they proceed further to the east. Looks like there's an exit where the existing exit is here on Highland and then a new one on Sherman. So I think that Sherman and Main Street interchange could be a spot where there could be some backup. Right turn only might be an option there to not have cars trying to turn left on the main. But that's kind of just a question for the future. But, I'm concerned about basically shifting the student traffic and buses from the Saratoga side. Now we just have buses on the Saratoga side and then student traffic and faculty traffic over to the Highland side. I think once people get used to it, there'll be adequate parking there for some events, but I'm reminded of Friday night football. I think there's cheerleading competitions, basketball tournaments. The whole area gets very crowded with traffic and cars, as you know. And I'm concerned with how that's going to affect the east side of Main Street and Highland Avenue. I think people will eventually learn to deal with it, but then they'll be back here asking us for stop signs and control measures as we tabled an item tonight. So I think we got to be really careful about how our decisions on the west side influence the east side of the property and kind of bundle it all together. So I'm still considering how that all plays into the conversation. I do notice at would be the south end of the east side parking lot, there's a diagonal marked parking lot. Is that for faculty or is that a separate parking area for a segment?
That's for some visitors and for student drop-off.
Okay.
We want to try to separate the student drop-off in the morning and pick up in the afternoon from the rest of the park.
And then I'll head over to the west side here. The buses, I think, just for clarification, they're not supposed to, they get onto Prince Street from Saratoga or from Lincoln off of Main Street. They can't go on the Brick Street that's further down on Prince, right? So they still have to go from Prairie or Main Street kind of around the beginning or the opening of Prince Street at Prairie.
I'm not sure how the brick streets work, but as far as I can tell, they're going to come in the same way they're coming in now.
Okay. So I think during the day, when you guys are in charge, as you've said, it's going to be easy to, I think you said release the buses, so do all the buses get let go pretty much at the same time once they're
afternoon,
loaded?
yes.
Okay. That was a concern of mine, of having kids running in between buses parked on these diagonals in this new lot. You know, I think that
We have a
there's a-
full-time person outside security that will
Okay.
be able to keep the kids, if there's a bus coming in, be able to keep the kids in the canopy area,
Okay.
you know, as the buses load.
The other question I had, there's a lot of extra parking on that new proposed west side lot. What would that be used for during a regular school day? So just to the north of the diagonal bus parking,
That'd be faculty parking.
faculty parking?
Some faculty parking, correct. And there's some handicapped, and we have some activity buses that we own that would park there, driver's ed cars.
Okay. So then let's get back to the extracurriculars. So, you know, tonight, right now, it's almost 8 o'clock. I bet there's probably a load of cars right now on Prince Street, both north and south of Grant Street. Is it the district's desire to get those vehicles to pull into the proposed bus lot to pick up there?
That's correct.
And will there be any kind of, what will the signage be like? What will the kind of the direction flow of those cars be like? Is there an outline for that?
The flows can be the same as it would be for buses coming in. We would like people to enter on Prince and leave on Saratoga. Just to make sure it's the same, so it's easy for people coming up Prince Street, which is where most people come to pick up their kids anyway. There'll be some signage. We haven't worked out the signage yet, but there'll be plenty of signage. We're going to have our coaches and our sponsors and everybody who's dealing with kids after school, have them really hit hard. You know, this is where you're expected to be picked up. This is the procedure. We're going to go through that many, many times. We have meetings with all the parents for athletics and things like that, and for band, music, all that kind of stuff. Every season we have a meeting with parents, and we'll constantly reinforce that. Our police officer will be out there, our security people will be out there, at least until people get in the habit of doing that.
Okay. On like Saturdays and special activities, the visiting buses will be expected to park in those diagonal lanes. How will you keep, say, an early arriving minivan with somebody in it from parking in a bus spot? I mean, obviously there'll be signage that says buses only, but I could see that lot, especially with those other kind of more traditional parking spots, getting filled up during a Saturday morning before a basketball tournament when you're getting 10 buses in there.
That might be correct. That might be a situation where when we have events on weekends, we have supervisors. We might have to have a supervisor out there directing traffic or telling people where to go.
And I think
Additionally, I think our athletic director, activities director, can notify those schools where we want people to park. I mean, I go to meetings all the time, and schools don't tell you exactly where they would like you to park.
where they would like you to park. That's the hard part, I guess, for everybody. We tell a lot of people where we would like them to park too, but they don't always listen to us. I guess one of my last questions, and then I'll let some others go, is right now Grant Street is closed at Saratoga at the end of the school day for like a half hour or something like that. With this new proposal, will Grant Street still need to be temporarily closed each day, or will that still be open for vehicles to come onto Prince and then head south?
I believe that would still be open. I think one of the reasons we want to do this is to keep the streets open as much as possible and get the bus traffic off the street into the parking lot. Maybe we as the buses are leaving the parking lot, we direct traffic and like they do it south. But I think one of our goals is to get as much traffic on the streets, vehicular traffic, cars, as opposed to buses just sitting there idling. I don't anticipate closing Grant Street.
Okay. And then I guess just to clarify, like I said, the east side, the vacation of Prince Street, that street really doesn't get used all that much, I think, during the day. And even on the weekends, it's kind of a shortcut for folks like me who want to avoid the light coming from Jewel back home. But I am worried about the increased traffic volume on Highland, Washington, Chicago, and Grant going down to the east side of our town. I think that's going to just put a burden on a lot of traffic heading south at the end of the day. Obviously, students and faculty heading north have a little bit easier, way home. So I'll be interested to see what we're going to consider as a village as we move forward with this proposal to kind of address that, hopefully in concert with District 99. The actual vacation of the roadway, I think we're going to get some more questions answered here and have some more information. It's an ambitious plan, and having seen the new improvements of the varsity softball field and the other thing, they look great. And just having said that, Commissioner Durkin, there's a pretty substantial fence right now already along Main Street on the west side, so I think there's no really place for the students to go if they were to try to run across Main, but...
I was actually more concerned about Main and Grant Street.
Yeah.
Where the pedestrian crosswalk is now.
That's a tough spot every morning.
That's
So
where I think a bridge should be.
it's something we say often up here, but, you know, when and if these improvements do happen, you know, enforcement from our police department would be greatly needed. I know there's still people that stop right at the green light in front of the high school and drop folks off, and that's an accident, bad accident waiting to happen. So changing behavior and changing locations of parking spots is not always an easy thing to do, but hopefully we can work with you to come up with it. So I guess I'm going to think about the east side. I know that's not what we're talking about for the vacation tonight, but that's a part of it, and it's something that I want to have a little bit more information on what there might be future plans for us going forward with that. I've used a lot of time tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Rankin, questions for either one of these gentlemen?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask or compliment, I like the drop-off area on the east side. That's something that isn't there right now, right? So there is no order to the drop-off. So are you going to say that certain folks get dropped off and picked up here, and then you're going to make another drop-off area by the buses? How do I understand that? I guess it's not clear.
Usually, right now, we pick, pretty much the kids are picked up and dropped off only on Forest Street, which really becomes a problem because there's just a lot of snags and snarls there. I mean, some kids get picked up across the street from Main Street. We're anticipating actually dropping off in the back by Prince Street will actually alleviate some of the problems at some of those other two positions. And it seems to not be a problem right now except for after athletics and activities. So our plan is to have people pick up and drop off in that parking lot, not on the street. That's not to say that we wouldn't look at something else.
Where the buses are.
Correct.
So are you going to make a very formal traffic flow kind of signage thing there? Because I could see that being an issue with buses and vehicles trying to navigate through there.
We probably have to do some things with signage there, or personnel, or to see, because right now we don't have any way to gauge what that's going to look like, because we don't have anybody dropping off there in the afternoon. In the morning, it's not a problem at all. Parents drop off there in the morning all the time because the buses don't come all at once. So I got to be honest with you and say, as much as Dr. McDonald's going to be mad at me for saying this, that's going to be a wait and see how we can best manage that. Our plan is to get them in the parking lot and drop off there, but if that doesn't work, we'll have to figure something else out.
So the canopy here is designed for the bus people and the
Right,
kids
pickups
that are
and drop-offs,
okay.
things like that.
I think I would just feel more comfortable if there was more of a plan with that area. I think there's danger just screaming out, and reading the Plan Commission minutes, a lot of people had some of the similar concerns as I'm putting forward. But I do think in the big picture of it all, there's more benefit to doing this than not doing it. So I just would like to maybe have a little more clarification on how you were planning on dealing with pickup and drop off in the bus area. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Schnell, do you have some additional questions?
I actually didn't know we were going to talk about the east side, so I had some questions on the east side, so I'll ask them now. The one question I had, and it was in your traffic study, they talked about a gate which in the east parking lot that would be probably in line just south of the softball field. So there's like the fence on the west side comes down, and then there's like a walkway. And if you look at the site plan, at least that we have, there's a little black mark that appears to be the gate that would allow students to get out there. That was my concern, is if indeed you're letting students exit from that east parking lot, kids don't like to walk.
That gate will be locked.
Okay, so it'll be locked and will not be able to get in.
That's for events and big events in the stadium, things like that, and have somebody there to help people cross the street, but that won't be open for students to cross the street.
Okay, my concern is anytime you try to cross anybody on that street, on Main Street, especially on a Saturday, it would be a zoo.
Yeah.
That's
And-
actually an open item.
Okay.
That staff is going to work with the district on because we share the same concerns. And through the permitting process of construction plans and that thing, we will
Okay.
address that. We are not in support of any mid-block crossings on Main
Okay.
Street.
I mean, I don't think at any time, I mean, I agree with Commissioner Durkin. If there was an overpass or an underpass under Main or over Main, it'd be one thing. But trying to stop traffic on a Saturday would be a zoo, and it would be an accident waiting to happen. The other question I have you talked, just looking again at the site plan for the east parking lot, it appears that the north exit onto Sherman is almost in line with the exit for the funeral home. And I know during funerals and visitations, Sherman is very, very crowded with cars because the parking lot for the funeral home can be small depending on obviously who the person who's deceased. My concern would be, are we going to limit parking? And again, this is discussion further down the road, but are we going to look at limiting parking on Sherman so that, at least on the south side of the street, so that when students come out, they'd be able to make the turns? Because that's tight. I mean, I've been to many funerals over there or wakes, and it gets really tight when people park on Sherman to go to the funeral home. So
Yeah, there's a myriad of issues related to the design and implementation of the east side parking lot.
Right.
The plans that you see here tonight are schematic to show in
Okay.
context of what's proposed with the Prince Street vacation. So at the staff level, a lot of the issues of signage, stop sign controls, those kind of things, we will work out with the district.
Okay. I mean, it just seemed like everybody had questions about the east side parking lot, so I throw my 2 cents into with my questions, because that really, I think what you've done with the vacation and the relocation of the fields and everything looks great. And I think just some tweaking that has to be done, but in general, I think it will work well for the campus. My main concern is that east parking lot. And I just think this fraught with possibilities of many problems. And I think that, but staff obviously has a sense of what council is talking about, and hopefully we'll work with the school district and work out some of the issues. So, but again, I think you've done a great job on the new athletic field and the parking lot. So hopefully it'll work out. And I think, as Commissioner Rankin said, I think it needs to be some signage and some tweaking in the drop-off, but that can be worked out easily too. So.
Commissioner Durkin.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. In line with what Commissioner Newstat brought up about the east side and the traffic and the potential for no parking in that on streets that right now have free parking, is that something we can address now? Is that something we can work with and start anticipating where we're going to have to put up signs?
Yes, in fact, we have started those conversations. We just didn't present any of the detailed sort of permitting issues
Sure.
for the
We're just talking about the
policy
vacation right now.
Yeah. But the answer to your question in general is the village staff working with the District 99 staff to address those issues of impact on the neighborhood, traffic safety controls? Yes.
Okay.
But we're not to the point to present them in any level of detail tonight. There had to be a certain sequencing. We had to know the answer to whether Prince Street could be vacated and can they go further with these plans, and then we can get into those details. But we have started those conversations. In fact, Dr. McDonald and I met well over a year ago to start talking about the layout of Prince Street and related issues.
As long as it's a workshop, I'm going to chime back in. It would,
There's going to be more comments later.
these are all comments that are valuable, and I'm sure there's lots of signage and tweaking to sort out. Truth of the matter is, Highland is jam-packed on a Friday night football as it is. What's almost certainly going to happen is, regardless of exactly what we tweak or do here, this body's going to hear from T&P 2 months, 6 months, 4 months, year after this is done, with a bunch of requests to adjust stuff. Think about just our current existing District 58 schools, how many times in the last decade we've changed rules about parking direction and signs and one-way streets and everything else. That is going to continue to happen. We can all think we got the answer on the schematic tonight. We're going to hear about this 40 times in the next 3 or 4 years. I caution us against thinking we're getting into too many details about exactly who's going to park where and where they might try and run across the street. They're running across the street in shorts during PE class right now. It's bigger elevation might be good here. Go ahead, Mayor, sorry.
No worries. So maybe we can let these two gentlemen sit down. Are there any questions of the council of either of them at this point in time, with respect to the vacation of that section of Prince Street.
I understand that, but I think in order for us to support this, Mayor, I understand it's a vacation, but there's many other things. I mean, I'm not interested in vacating something if I know they're not going to look at my concern, because without the vacating, they can't, so.
Well, no, I'm not disagreeing with that,
Okay.
Commissioner, because when I eventually get around to putting in my 2 cents, those are legitimate issues with respect to the portion of the vacation, but we're talking about something on the other side of the campus, which is another discussion. And so I think that's what Commissioner Barnett's talking about. And you're never going to get it right tonight, no matter what you do. All right, so what I'm going to propose is, gentlemen, if you want to go ahead and take a seat, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate you being there. At this point in time, I'm going to open it up for questions or comments from members of the audience, and then we'll throw it back to the council for additional comments and questions, because we obviously want to hear what you have to say. So if you have any questions or comments with respect to this proposed item, and I will again reiterate, this is the only item that's before us tonight is the request to vacate a portion of Prince Street between Grant and Sherman. That's all we're talking about right now. And yes, obviously the neighborhood surrounding that proposed vacation is relevant, but I would, notwithstanding where some of our comments up here have led, the east parking lot is not really on the table tonight. So I would just throw that out there if you could, please. If you could, good evening, sir. Happy New Year. If you could please give us your name and address. We'd
all of you. My
glad
name
to hear
is
from you.
Tom LeCreme, 545 Chicago Avenue. What I want to comment about is the proposed waiver of the fee for the fair market value of the 8 properties that abut, what you call it. You're going to set a deadly precedent if that occurs. So I believe the way the policy currently reads is that for other government bodies and not-for-profits, we can waive that fee if there's no direct cost to the village. I believe that's the wordage in context. There has been cost to the village. Staff spent a great deal of time on this proposal, and staff time is money. Money is cost. So to waive that fee makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. Plus, if you remember, we're dealing with District 99, which has a wider tax base than we do. The people in parts of Oak Brook, Woodridge, Darien pay taxes to District 99, and this is a District 99 cost, therefore it ought to be borne by District 99. Yeah, I'll pay my share because I live in Downers Grove. But if we waive that fee, then the people in Oak Brook, Woodridge, Darien are getting off scot-free, and that's not correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. LeCrane. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? All right, after the extensive public comment, are there other questions or comments from members of the council?
I do, in line with what Mr. LeCreme was talking about, when District 58 did some renovations on their buildings, did we waive the fees for them? Again, it's a similar situation in that the taxing, there are other communities involved in.
Well, I think we need to clarify something. There's the fee, and then there's also our policy, Resolution 2003-58, which provides for the possibility of actually requiring the payment of the fair market value for the land to be paid to the village. I don't view that as a fee.
All right.
There's 2 policies.
Two different policies here.
In play. The first council policy is
So which one are we
regarding
talking about?
the vacation and compensation for the vacation. And that policy says that the council can determine the fair market value and therefore compensation to the village, if any, for a vacation of a right-of-way. And staff recommends that we don't require a payment from this public body to our public body. In this case, we have not encountered a situation where we vacated a street to another public entity. The other policy question in play is our fee waiver policy, and there's specific policies on waiving fees for coterminous or semi-coterminous governments in their application fees and fees for staff time in the review, and that's administered by staff, but that is a standing council policy, and we do plan to follow and will follow that policy, which will lead to some level of fee waivers, but not for any out-of-pocket expenses or any consultants we may have used, just waiver of staff time.
We've never had a situation where another taxing body, like District 58, has come in and asked for a street vacation.
Right, and certainly not since our right-of-way policy took shape in the early 2000s.
Okay.
2003.
I don't remember that, but that's
He does.
a couple years before.
We had
I remember that very well. Very well.
Mayor, one last point, if I may.
No, go ahead. I haven't started yet. so
I
go
think,
ahead.
I think to Commissioner Durkin's point, the Prince Street vacation does impact what happens on the east side with the parking lot, because without the Prince Street vacation, there may not be any east side parking lots. So I
Well,
think
but that's District 99's choice.
It is, but I
We could
think-
give them the vacation, and they could decide not to go ahead and do the east
But
parking lot.
for our consideration, I think we have to look into the future in the crystal ball a little bit. At least that's provided to us by District 99. So I think they do go together in some regard. So I think those questions are fair.
I'm only trying to be consistent because typically we don't have District 99 coming before us asking for a street or an alley vacation. Typically, we have residents, and oftentimes you'll have a resident come in and say, I would like the street to be vacated, and then we start asking all kinds of questions about what they're going to build on it. And it's, well, we'll time out. You're either going to vacate it or not. The questions about what they're building and so on and so forth afterwards, we typically try to not shy away from, but to recognize that there is a policy in place that provides criteria that govern the decision at hand. And then there will be another process afterwards at which, should that person choose to build something on that new land, or the new consolidated land, the vacated land, yes, then we get to ask all the questions, and they have to meet all the criteria that are consistent with that. But I'm just trying to make sure that those things are taken in sequence. But no one's been cut off for asking those questions, obviously, because they have.
But the sequence could be changed or modified even for a homeowner who vacates a piece of land if they all of a sudden realize that, well, if I don't get my vacation, because I can't put a parking lot, or I can't put a shed or a pool or another house or a mother-in-law suite or anything, that has to go into the big picture.
Well, it may go into their decision-making. They may decide not to go forward with the vacation and pay the fair market value of the land to the village if they know that what they plan to do with that vacated property they can't do. Fair question. But from our analysis, what they choose to do with their land, as long as it's consistent with our other zoning ordinances, building code, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, those are related but different questions. But we obviously have been talking about them, and no one, the petitioner has not objected. Well, I again want to kind of focus it back on the question at hand, which is the vacation of the segment of Prince Street between Grant and Sherman. And the good news is that we have policies that actually govern this situation. It's the application of those policies that is what we need to do, and it's, as was pointed out by Manager Fieldman, unique in that we've never had another taxing body make a request for a street or an alley to be vacated, so this is somewhat uncharted territory for us. But we also plan well and have some vision because we both have a vacation policy. It's Resolution 2003-58, thus the 2003. Not really, it's a coincidence. And the other policy, of course, is our recently adopted comprehensive plan, which is why we have this thing, because when we have these questions come before us, we can refer to it. I'll just pick up where Commissioner Barnett left off in one degree, is that it's a foregone conclusion that in a landlocked community, in a landlocked parcel and campus, if you will, there are a great deal of challenges for Downers Grove North. There's no question about that. So to the extent that we can collaborate with another taxing body, and it's certainly been our conversation so far this year, or last year, I should say, and continuing this year, we should do that where it makes sense to do so. And the question then becomes, do we vacate this street? And there are two things with respect to our vacation policy that I've always been very, very adamant about. Is number one, that it must be dead certain that there is no foreseeable need for the village to utilize the portion of street that is sought to be vacated. Because if we think that there's some continued use for it, in the grand scheme of things, then on balance it should not be vacated. The other analysis is whether or not the public should benefit from receiving the value of that land. And part of the reason why we amended the vacation policy in 2003 was to specifically incorporate a provision about the petitioner seeking the vacation paying to the village, the taxpayers really, the fair market value for the property. Now, I will give you the caveat that it is not mandatory, unlike our fee provisions with respect to other work where a fee is assessed and then we have the opportunity to waive that fee. In our resolution 2003-58, I think it's in, it's either in 1H or 1D, I forget. But it is not mandatory that the petitioner pay for the property. But that has certainly been our practice with respect to other folks who have come before us. The theory being that a street that is part of the Village of Downers Grove right-of-way is a public asset. And it would be wrong for the public to lose an asset without getting something in terms of recompense. Now, obviously, we have a very unique situation here in that the petitioner is also a public entity, and is the land going from one public body to another public body? I don't know. That's a unique situation we've not encountered before. But let me step back and take this one point in time, because I think someone used the word dangerous precedent, and it's not necessarily the fee, but we get these all the time. And whether it's District 99 or it's two residents living in our community, we need to treat everybody the same way. So I plan to come about this in the very same way I would if it was a resident who wanted to vacate a portion of the street next door to them. We consider District 99 to be our neighbor and a resident, and going to look at it the same way, although there are clearly some very unique aspects to this analysis that we are not normally faced with. The policy, as I mentioned, requires essentially that there must be a determination by the village, and I believe this is 1D, that we need to look at the potential future need for the parcel, which would be this segment of Prince Street, the potential for increased traffic associated with the vacation of the parcel, thus all the questions about the traffic and the impact and the turning of the buses and whatnot. Those are all absolutely legitimate questions because that's what our policy requires. And the estimated future cost to the village associated with the vacation should it be granted. We obviously have that information presented to us in the staff report, as well as the previous Plan Commission discussions, and that's why we're looking at all these different issues. The potential future need for the parcel is a good question, because normally I'm very reluctant to vacate any streets unless we are fairly certain they will never be used for any purpose. You never say never. This is a unique situation because that street almost isn't used the way it is right now. Heck, it wasn't used for much when I went there over 30 years ago. Should I admit that? But what I'm really struck by is our comprehensive plan. And there's at least two elements of it that would weigh in my mind in favor of the vacation in terms of the need aspect. Both of those appear on page 84 of our comprehensive plan. One segment states the village support the continued operation and improvement of both public and private school facilities while ensuring that they do not negatively impact residential neighborhoods through traffic, lighting, and intense activity, and cooperate with the various organizations to maintain high-quality schools, sites, and facilities. Well, here we have an opportunity to do that. There's another segment on that same page of the comprehensive plan that states, should School District 99 elect to address this issue, referring to school parking and its lack thereof, the village should assist the district in identifying potential solutions to its parking needs while being sensitive to the impact on adjacent residential areas. So I do find some guidance in our comprehensive plan on whether or not the need question, the potential future use of this segment, whether that element of our policy has been met or not. I'm not completely on solid ground there, but I am leaning in that direction. The other issues that we have to look at are found in 1H of that same policy. The village council shall determine, not maybe determine, we shall determine, one, whether the parcel or portion thereof is no longer necessary for public use and whether the public interest will be served by such vacation request. Well, I've already kind of touched upon that. Whether it's no longer necessary for public use is maybe a mixed question. Whether the public interest will be served by such vacation request, I think that is clearly yes, and enforced by our comprehensive plan. 1H, little 2, next question we're supposed to determine is whether the parcel or any portion thereof should be vacated and whether public utility easements and any ingress, egress easements are to be maintained. I think those have been addressed in the discussion below and what's been referred to us in the reports that we have in front of us. I see those issues as having been satisfied. And then the last question is the amount and type of compensation, if any, and that's the key part, if any, to be required as a condition to the effectiveness of the vacation of the parcel. This is the conversation about whether or not the fair market value of that segment of street, a public asset, should be paid for by the petitioner so that the public gets the benefit of having sold its property. And the amount here is significant. It's about $147,000 based on our calculation. And when we amended this policy in 2003, part of the reason was is that we didn't just vacate property without knowing what it was worth. That's why we require the petitioner to actually have an appraisal done. We get this information so that the council and the public can make an informed decision about whether or not to require compensation. And it is discretionary based on the language of the ordinance. I got to tell you, I've always been adamant about the compensation being required, but this is a unique situation, so I'm kind of up in the air on it because we're really talking about, we're not talking about moving public property into private hands, which is usually the case. We're talking about moving public property over into public property. So I can understand in this situation the compensation not being required because it is in that situation. And yes, it's not a perfect argument because we're not completely coterminous, but I get it, I understand it, and I think there's a more than plausible reason for that request. The last issue is also important because at the Plan Commission, members of the public and also my colleagues have asked a lot of questions about conditions that might be placed on this vacation, and our policy in 1I permits that. So yes, we can place conditions on the vacation. They should, I think, be related to the vacation itself and the ingress and egress and other traffic impact issues surrounding that parcel. But that is a legitimate point of our policy in making this decision. So I'll have to say that right now I'm leaning in favor of this, applying our policy as written in the spirit of cooperation and with the guidance of our comprehensive plan, but I do have a couple issues in my head to work through in terms of the compensation. So that's kind of my thoughts at this point in time. I've now exceeded Commissioner Neustat's commentary, so if there are any other questions or comments from anybody else, be my guest. Hearing none, I think that brings us to the end of our first reading.
That ends our first reading tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
That brings us to item 9 on our agenda, which is the mayor's report. And I have, as I always do, an update with respect to our efforts to try to enhance and improve reliability of ComEd electrical service within our community. This is the first update report of 2012, following on our efforts of last summer. And a quick update on where we're at. ComEd has notified the village that it has completed a cable replacement project in the circuit north of the intersection of Fairview and Ogden. The project consisted of replacement of 500 feet of underground cable along School Street. Did we plan that? This circuit was identified as a priority circuit in the village's reliability study in 2011. This is the one that we had done last year in conjunction with the town hall meeting. ComEd is also starting enhanced tree trimming in areas identified as vulnerable to tree-related outages. Residents whose trees are affected have been notified by ComEd. The village has posted a map of the affected areas on the village's website. So if you're interested in knowing what the affected areas are, you can go to the village website and look those up, to the extent that you may not have received notice. All circuits included in the enhanced tree trimming were identified by either the village or ComEd as a result of the reliability report that we did back this summer. Question I have is, are we hearing any further comments about whether the notice of tree trimming has been sufficient or not?
I'm not aware of any complaints, so that's a good place to start. So we will continue to monitor to sort of check in with areas that we know are having tree trimming and see if we feel like ComEd reached the areas affected adequately. Okay.
I'd appreciate knowing that because I know there were some surprises in some of the tree trimming efforts previously in terms of whether residents were expecting it or not. Any questions or comments from the council with respect to ComEd reliability update? That's all I had on the mayor's report. That brings us to item 10, the manager's report.
A couple months ago, the village council directed staff to continue considering a stormwater utility, and we set about doing a public engagement effort. That public engagement effort has now started and is underway. I invite anyone interested in the stormwater utility, and by the way, that does affect every property in Downers Grove, so that should be everybody, to take a look at our website and click on stormwater and get some information about the proposed stormwater utility that's under consideration. We did produce and post a 5-part informational video Each segment is about 5 minutes long or shorter, so you can watch it over time. It's a good way to get brought up to speed on the policy issues related to the proposed stormwater utility. We do have public meetings scheduled for January 23rd, 24th, and 25th. They are targeted towards residents, businesses, and churches and not-for-profits. We'd like those groups to come to these meetings to learn a little bit more about what's proposed, but more importantly, to understand the comments, questions, and concerns so that we can package those up for the village council to react to and respond to when the council further considers this item in March. There's also the opportunity to email the staff any question you have about how the stormwater utility, if approved, would affect your property taxes, the fees you might be charged. So we're really at the front end of this engagement effort, which will run the next 2 months, and then we'll be back in front of the council in March. And that ends our manager's report tonight, Mayor.
Thank you. Brings us to the attorney's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I only have one item to present tonight, and that is an ordinance vacating a certain portion of Prince Street.
Thank you. Brings us to item 12 on the agenda, council member reports and new business. Commissioner Newstead, you want to start us off?
Thank you, Mayor. This Saturday, January 7th, 2012, the village will host an electronics recycling event. As of January 1st, 2012, TVs, computers, laptops, monitors, printers, computers, peripherals, VCRs, DVDs, all that stuff can no longer go to a landfill. So we're helping out our residents by helping them recycle. You can bring your items on the first Saturday of each month. This month it's January 7th from 9 a.m. till 12 p.m. right here at Village Hall. In the drop-off location will kind of be behind the council chambers in the staff parking lot off of Curtis. For more information and a list of acceptable items, you can check out downers.us. It's the main page on our front page of our website. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Rankin.
I have no report.
Outstanding. Commissioner Schnell.
I have nothing.
Also outstanding. Commissioner Durkin.
I just have one question based on what Commissioner Newstead had said. How is that being enforced? Recyclables? I mean, or are the computers and stuff that's not to be thrown away today? Does our hauler, because I was going to go through the contract, but I didn't have the most recent one, to see if there was any language in that, how that is enforced. I mean, if they come across something that's not to be in the garbage, like a computer, do they bring it to our attention? Do we then write a citation? Do they just notify the person whose garbage can it is?
We'll get you a report on that. I don't have the answer to that.
I don't need a big report. I just out of curiosity, I was just wondering about that because I know several people use other people's garbage cans during the day, and you could actually come home and get a red tag and not know you even had a red tag.
We'll look into that and get you some information.
Thank you. And that's all I have.
Thank you,
Actually,
Commissioner.
no report, so
Thank you, Commissioner.
blame it on Jeff.
We always do. Commissioner Barnett.
I have no report, Mayor, but I'd like to touch on a new business item. We've had some discussions, I think, amongst ourselves, amongst staff over the last 4 to 6 weeks, and I think it would be good for us as a group to be either have an agenda item for the near future or some sort of a draft to consider on the subject of council travel reimbursements, expenditures related to education and training. I think there's some opportunity for us to get a little more all on the same page, so to speak, on that subject. And I'd like it to not go much farther because these opportunities present themselves regularly, and we should take advantage of them as long as we're all on the same page.
I agree. I think it's a good idea. I think we probably ought to have a discussion on that as soon as practicable, because you're right, opportunities will present themselves, and I think it's important that everyone knows exactly what the rules are, and everyone has the same expectations, so I agree completely. If that's 3. I don't think anybody's going to disagree.
I'll vote on that.
All right, so,
We'll package that up for a future agenda.
great. I don't think it'll take a lot of, hopefully it won't take a lot of discussion. Having the discussion is probably more important than anything else.
That's all I have, Mayor.
Right. I don't have any report tonight. I just want to wish everyone a safe, happy, healthy, and prosperous new year. Welcome to 2012. It's going to be a doozy, and all in a good way. So with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Schnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Thank you. We are adjourned. Good night.